Well, hello, and welcome to our front and backyard garden here in the South Carolina upstate. This is going to be our final episode of the year. It's Thanksgiving Day, so happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And the reason I'm doing the last one today is because we were supposed to get our first frost of the season tonight, as a matter of fact. It's supposed to go down to right at 32 degrees. We still have not had one, which is almost unheard of. Last year we had our first one in mid-October, so we had a much shorter growing season. And tonight is supposed to be 32, and then tomorrow night 27. So anything that doesn't die off tonight is definitely going to die off tomorrow. So we're going to enjoy one last tour of our garden. We're going to do both the front and back because there isn't that much left. We're going to just kind of show off a few things. You can see some of our Christmas lights. We just finished putting those up today, and I mean, it is getting close to the end of the year. Beautiful day. Where we come from in Ohio, this would be unheard of to have a day like this in November, especially late November. It's usually cold. Our daughter's home from school in Indiana right now. It was snowing when she left. And here it's about 65 right now. Very pleasant. A little bit of a breeze, so it feels a little bit cooler, but it has been about as nice as it could be in November, and everything is looking very fallish. Lots of color still, especially with our Japanese maple there in the front, bright red in color. And again, in the north, we would have long since lost all of our leaves by now. We still have quite a few left. Probably in the next week or two, most of the rest will be gone. Anyway, we're gonna just do our quick tour here. As always, starting off with our mailbox bed. About the only thing still growing here, well, as soon as I said that, I took it back. Two things still growing here. Our clematis, spring flower, you'd never know it. More blooms right now than it's had all through the fall. Last week it didn't have anything, but it had a bunch of buds, and now it's blooming nicely. Now, once we get that frost, I think they'll probably be done, but they'll be back probably in March. I can't remember exactly when the flowering starts, but the leaves will start up in February. We started our first video last year, February 10th, so this is episode 43. We already had some daffodils out by that time, and I think some pansies as well. So our growing season this year is going to be about 10 months, which is almost a record. It's kind of fun. I hope we can get the same thing next year, but I'm not going to count on it. Last year it was about 8.5 months. So I've still got some vinca here. They're doing okay. They're not really putting out much in the way of flowers. I think they're largely done from that standpoint, but the plants themselves are actually doing pretty well. Then as we come up here, more of the same. We have a lot of vinca. Putting out a few of the smaller white flowers. This is one thing that's kind of interesting too, as the weather has gotten colder. Not only is the number of flowers decreasing, but the size is decreasing too. So even though they're still blooming, it's far less impressive. Now, where you look here, you can see some branches that have kind of died off. So I'm thinking we got down to about 34 degrees, I think it was about a week ago. And I'm thinking there may have been just some isolated little ice crystals here and there that was enough to kill off some of these leaves. So we were probably hovering maybe right in this area at 32, 33 degrees, and a few things appear to have died off, but then a lot of them, the majority of them, are still doing okay. More vinca over here, and then of course our dianthus. This thing just keeps on moving. Started in the spring. That's when it's really in full bloom, but it's still giving us flowers even now. Just about everything else, though, up here in the front is largely done, with the exception of this climbing rose. It has, there's six blooms on it. These beautiful bright red blooms. This is an amazing plant. It had lost all of its leaves due to black spot. Got about half of them back, and it has continued to put out flowers. In fact, even now it's got a couple more buds. I'm gonna guess they don't come out because of the frost, but we will see. Everything else up in here is done. We have one more dianthus right here. It's actually blooming more now than it has since spring. But everything else really through here is finished up. Certainly the hydrangeas are long since finished. Viburnum is a springtime bush. We do have our hollies, which you can see the berries close up. This is about the only time that hollies have any value with their thorns and how aggressively they grow. They're not one of my favorites, although I do think we're getting more berries this year than we've gotten before. Now, interestingly enough, our neighbors have a holly that's almost to the top of their second floor. You can see berries everywhere. That one is really, really done well. We've kind of shaved ours back to not be quite so big. We didn't want them taking over. But again, you can see lots and lots and lots and lots of berries over in here. Very, very pretty, but not much more to that. And then over here, our little citrus grove that I show off periodically, our lemons and oranges. None of them really doing anything right now. There were two down here that I'll show at the end. We have taken those around to the back porch because they are doing a lot, and we're going to see that shortly. And then out here in the front, amazingly, the azaleas just keep on blooming. I've never seen anything like this. I'm used to azaleas in the spring. In Ohio, where we used to live, they really only bloomed in the spring. Here you get two blooms, one in the spring, one in the fall. This one has been longer, I think about 8 weeks now. In the spring, the leaves or the flowers start to die off because it gets hotter. They don't handle that well. Here they deal with cool temperatures very well. In fact, they may even handle the frost. We'll see how that goes. Got another azalea here, and then this one with the all the light pink flowers. This is the one that faces the street, so it really gives us it gives a nice view to the neighbors and people driving by. And really, it should be just about maybe another 3-4 months before they're blooming again come spring. It's one nice thing here, and these are our underperforming knockout roses. These do very well in the spring, but this year they haven't done too much in the fall. Some of our neighbors have had a lot of success. I don't know how these are going to do. I don't get the sense that they're thriving at this point. We may have to take some of them out next year, but we'll see. They've been good performers for us for the 4 or 5 years that we've had them in. But we do get such a long growing season, so when the last flowers are finished up, and again, we've got some more vinca in here. Not a lot else, though. And once the last flowers are finished up, it's a good 6 months in Ohio before you get anything again. Beautiful knockout rose there. Just kind of an isolated one, strangely enough. Not much else going on with these. Got this one coral knockout here. It's got a couple flowers on it, but nothing really to write home about. And over on this side, we have our one lone dianthus, and that's it. Everything else long since finished up. Lilies, both daylilies and Asiatic lilies. Just all kinds of things, dahlias, and you name it. But next year we should be getting a lot back, and hopefully we'll have lots of flowers to show off again for any of you that want to continue to watch us come probably February, depending on the weather. We usually get our first daffodils blooming in early, or not early, but about mid-January. One year I think we had our first bloom on January 7th. Usually it's a week or two after that, and then around the first week or so of February I start to do the videos when there's actually something worth looking at. So as we come down through here, I always talk about our cleome, which continue to bloom, although they're kind of finishing up. We have some new cleome plants that have started up, but they're not doing too well because of the cold. But we are seeing a few flowers left. Nothing dramatic, but they'll be back next year, I'm certain. Hydrangeas long since finished. Butterfly bushes long since finished. Zinnias are done. Most of the vinca back here are done. One thing that's still going is this celosia. Beautiful, beautiful plant. We have one over on the other side that's doing even better. We'll see that in a minute. We do have, I forgot to show this in the front yard. We went right past it. Our petite knockout rose. One in the front yard doing much better. We have two back here that really are kind of struggling. I don't think they get quite enough light. But everything else back here, like I say, butterfly bushes, knockout roses, clematis, they're all pretty much finished. We do have some more azaleas back in here, still blooming. Not as much as they were last week. Some of the colder weather and shorter days, I think, are doing them in, but still decent amount of color considering how late in the season it is. And we have a total of 6 of those, so we'll see how they do next week. The impatiens have really kind of given up, I think, for the year. Still a handful of flowers out here, but the plants themselves are really spindly and most of the leaves have fallen off. They really kind of peak in August and September, and then after that they just sort of wither slowly. Now, one thing that has done well, and I show this off every week, is this begonia. We have a couple of them here, but these bright red ones, they've done really well since we put them in back in, I think, May. And you can see them from the house, so it's kind of nice. We had some more traditional pink begonias, which have not done anywhere near as well, and they're pretty much finished for the year. Back in here, not much to show off. We do have our one big knockout here that's done for the year, but I think it'll have a good 2025. This is the one that came back from being chewed down to the ground by beavers, and it's come back in short order. So here we have a hibiscus. This is one that never really did all that well. It has a flower here that's just finished up. This is a red one. We have one over here that's given us yellow flowers, although this one really did better as a plant than for flowers. We got more flowers off the small one, strangely enough, as the year progressed. Up here, all of our climbing roses, jasmine, clematis, they're all done for the year. Just a lot of greenery at this point. Some zinnias just kind of hanging out. Nothing really to show off at this point. Some gardenias. Now these will start to bloom in January, so we'll get to see these when we start up again in the spring, actually in the winter. And they give bright red flowers with yellow centers, and so we'll be looking forward to seeing those. This is the other celosia that I mentioned, and it's doing better than it's done all year. I imagine that it's going to struggle once we get the frost, but who knows. I'm hoping it'll come back next year, but I believe, I'm not positive about this, but I believe celosias are annuals, so we may not see that one back. We can certainly seek out another one. And here's an odd thing, and this is one of the fun things about gardening. It's out in the middle of nowhere. We have one giant clematis flower. It's about the only one on that plant. In fact, the only one in this part of the yard. Everything else just about finished up here. There's a clematis over here, but even the plant itself is doing pretty well. It even had some flowers last week, but they're all gone. And just about everything else is finished up. This is our wisteria here, losing most of its leaves. It'll come back in with a vengeance next year. And then down here, the canna, we're just about finished up. A lot of these fell over when we had Hurricane Helene, back at the end of September, and we just really never did anything. Not much to do for this time of year down here. Everything's kind of finished up, but next year, as usual, we'll have irises in the spring, daylilies in the late spring, early summer, and then that'll give way to black-eyed Susans to kind of finish off the summer. But by this time of year, every year, they're not doing so well. Here, I'll just give you one last look at our pond. Beautiful view on a day like this. Still a fair amount of color. Not quite as much as there was in the past, but everything's looking really good. One thing I have not shown off, because there hasn't been a lot to show, quite honestly, so far at least, but I'm hoping maybe next year there will be. I'm kind of looking here for it. We got a friend gave me a water lily, and I'm not seeing much evidence of it. Oh, here it is. So it was just in a pot that I put in right there, and I just let it grow, and you can see some of the leaves, but it looks to me like it has spread all around. I see some of these smaller leaves over in here. I think those are water lilies. I'll be really curious to see what those do next year. They're really pretty low maintenance, so I'm hopeful that we'll get some nice lilies down in there. That's otherwise kind of a lost area of our yard as it kind of settles into the pond. There's really nothing that we've been able to do with it. Now on this side of the trellis, you can see one area where we still have some of our pink climbing roses. These are the most prolific things we have in the entire yard. We have 4 of them, and most of them are done for the year, but this one still going. They started blooming, I think, probably in March, and as I say, most of them are done, but we still have a lot of color, and we have some over here that I'll show you in a moment too. And then not much up this way. This area over in here is primarily a spring garden. Few vincas coming up through the weeds, a handful of marigolds still hanging on. For the most part, not a whole lot to see. I'm not going to give you a tour of the weeds. It just doesn't really have the right effect. But this is another one of the climbing roses still hanging in there, and certainly zinnias in this area long since finished up, and still have, strangely enough, tomatoes are doing well, at least from a plant standpoint, even if they haven't been too prolific from a tomato standpoint. Haven't had a ton of tomatoes through here, but the plants themselves have been doing pretty well. I think the heat this past summer was probably what kept them from doing as well as they had done in the past. We had gotten hundreds of tomatoes in previous years, but not this year. We're going to finish up here on our deck. Few morning glories still blooming, although not at this point in the day. Still getting a few flowers off of them. And then geraniums and petunias here in this pot. And vinca, marigolds. Marigolds have just about finished up. They don't like the cooler weather and the shorter days. But then I don't know what it is exactly, but this little blue wildflower is kind of in full bloom right now. So who would have thought? You just never know. One more thing I'll show off. Kind of a pleasant thing to end on. And we'll see what these look like in 2 months when we start these videos back up. Our lemons, I've moved them out here, and as you can see, we actually have some lemons growing. We'll see what becomes of those. Lots and lots of flowers. I'm going to bring these inside soon and see how they do, but we've got flowers on this one, so we should get more lemons as time goes by if we can get them to pollinate each other. We'll just take a little brush and try to pollinate artificially, since hopefully there won't be any bugs on the inside to do that for us. So in any case, that is the end for 2024. I hope you've enjoyed our weekly tours of the garden. It's been a lot of fun. I have learned a lot in the process of having to spit out all this information every week. My wife is the expert on gardening, and she's really been the architect of our garden from day one. Hopefully we'll see you again in a couple of months. And as I say, as soon as the weather is pleasant enough to start getting some daffodils and maybe gardenias, we'll do a quick video of the yard, and then start to make regular ones once some of the other stuff starts to come out. Hopefully as soon as possible. Last year it was February 10th, but we probably could do one as soon as the end of January, depending on how the winter goes. So we'll see what happens. So as always, hope it's sunny wherever you are, and until next year, happy gardening.